Okay, originally I was going to have a video about John Cena, and that was the video that I filmed last week and was going to air sometime earlier this week, but after the whole fucking shitstorm that happened Monday night, I said, okay, fuck that video, I got to do something else that ties into that, because that's just too sweet. But after that fiasco in the Monday Night Football game, I mean, wow. I'm happy to have the real referees back. Let's just say that. That is a play that will live in infamy. God, fuck, my grandkids will be seeing clips of that. I mean, that trumps the Immaculate Reception to me. Not in terms of spectacle, but in terms of controversy, because the Immaculate Reception at least happened in an era when instant replay wasn't around. And I've watched that play like 1,000 times, and to be honest, I couldn't tell you what the right call is, because it's like we're missing that one good camera angle to show us whether or not that play should stand. And so that play getting called I can kind of forgive, because the tools just weren't there to fully analyze it on the spot like that. Now we have that, and there's no excuse for what happened. Even the replacement refs are like, all right, you got the call wrong initially. That I can understand. I don't understand how the thing can go to review and you still make the wrong call, but whatever. And it was just such a shitstorm that happened. But what really stood out to me were some of the responses. I know Skip Bayless, who I can't stand, he made a comment about it, and Amani Toomer, who I love, because obviously, he's a former Giant, one of our best wide receivers in the last 20 years, possibly ever. Both he and Skip and several others made a comment akin to this. This isn't a direct quote, it's just a general paraphrasing. I feel like I'm watching the WWE when something like this happens. And that was meant in a very derogatory sense. And that really struck me as interesting. And it really gave me an insight to see how non-fans view professional wrestling. And in a way, I can't blame them. And I'm going to tie this back into some of the things that I've talked about before. Although I do have to admit, it is kind of funny that WWE's doing an angle about bad referees, concurrently with this whole fiasco. But I do think it's interesting that people kind of have that view of wrestling, because especially after the Attitude Era, and a lot of fans keep saying we need to have the Attitude Era back, and I strongly disagree with that. I think we need to move past the Attitude Era, which I don't think we ever fully did, and wrestling needs to evolve into something different. And I've often advocated a more sports-like approach. Obviously, you can't eliminate the full entertainment aspect of wrestling, because I think that's what separates wrestling from real sports, so you can't do that. But I would appreciate a stronger attention to detail when it comes to the rules, and less theatrics when it came to officiating. And this is where I'm going to tie back into wrestling. I mean, wrestling fans, let's be honest. Whenever you see a ref bump, don't you just kind of roll your eyes? It feels like a cheap trick at this point, rather than a good storytelling device. It just feels like a lazy excuse to add drama and everything. And it's happened so many times over the years in so many different companies that after a while you kind of start asking, you think they'd have a better contingency plan when something like this happens. I wish there was more of a consistency with the rules. And this is why I've advocated WWE and TNA making a rule book and then actually sticking to it, because there doesn't seem to be much of a consistency when it comes to disqualifications. A few months ago, there was that tag match where Big Show got disqualified for breaking up a pin. Name me one time that had ever happened before in WWE. I mean, there's no precedence for it. I'll be honest, I like that rule, because I feel like too many tag matches end in just a goddamn free-for-all, and after a while, you gotta start asking, well, what's the point of fucking tagging when you can just fly all over the ring and bodies flying everywhere, and there's no real point to tagging. So I don't mind that. I know a lot of NWA territories back in the 80s kind of had something like that, where it was very strict on you can't run into the ring when you're not the legal partner. And in the 80s, the WWF had the 5-second rule in between tags, where you could double team for 5 seconds in between tags. But so I don't have a problem with the rule. But that was never a rule before. You just made that up on the spot to force in whatever story that you wanted to do. And I kind of talked about it before. I hate how a lot of matches end in no contests and not having a winner. I think that's kind of cheap. It's kind of a cheap trick. Rude and Storm got thrown out last week. And, if you're going to do that match, at least give us a winner, because then otherwise, why does the match matter? Who really gives a shit, first of all, I wouldn't have even done the match in the first place. But if you're going to do Rude and Storm on Impact, it's like, all right, just have Rude win by DQ. Storm loses his temper and goes crazy, and when Rude wins by DQ, that sets up their street fight for Bound for Glory. There you go. Very basic, but whatever. It would be nice to not have so many matches end in no contests. And again, I've talked about this before. Just more attention to the rules, a better use of officials. Actually, the best use of officials is when you don't notice that they're there, and they kind of just blend into everything, and you just don't realize that you're watching a referee. And actually, I'm gonna call back to another WWE tag match. This was a few weeks ago. It was Rey and Sin Cara versus somebody. I don't remember. I think it was Epico and Primo, but I'm not sure. And Rey and Sin Cara botched the tag at the end to set up the finish. And the referee, it might have been Brad Maddox, who's the referee in this whole angle they're doing with Punk right now. He noticed that they botched the tag, and he wouldn't allow it as a legal tag. He kind of forced them to do the tag over again. And I just sat there thinking, somebody give that referee a gold star. I'm impressed that he actually paid attention to details like that. But, and again, in moving towards that more sports-like atmosphere and the more sports-like presentation that I've been calling for, I do think it would be better if they cut back on things like run-ins. So many run-ins happen now in wrestling, and they've been happening for years and years and years. You think there would be a punishment now for doing it, like maybe a fine or something for running in and ruining a match. Now it's just an accepted norm. Or even, you do a run-in, and it's an automatic... I don't know, you have your last 3 wins taken from you or some, as punishment. I don't know, something like that. Or there should be some kind of punishment for actually doing a run-in now, because it's such it should be viewed as like an epidemic if you think about it in professional wrestling. And again, at this point, it just kind of feels like a cheap trick to either save a finish for a bigger match down the road, when like I've argued before, the first match probably shouldn't even be taking place at all, and things of that nature. So I do wish that they put more emphasis on the rules. Like I said, a rule book would certainly help, and actually let the rules kind of help add to the story a little bit. Actually, one of my favorite things that Ring of Honor ever did, and some fans I've talked to hated it, just absolutely hated it, but I love the pure title. I thought that was a really cool idea, and I really got invested in the things that they did. Oh, you only have 3 rope breaks per match. I'm like, that to me, it's like timeouts in football. It gave you something extra to kind of follow and keep track of while the match was in progress. I kind of liked it, and it added more, you would see guys kind of change strategies a little bit from match to match. When should I use a rope break? When's this a good idea to use a rope break? Things of that nature. And then a few other rules as well. That was the one that definitely stood out to me. But I really liked it, and some fans hated it. They said it was too complex. That doesn't sound complex to me. It's like the people who said the Bound for Glory series was too complicated. I'm like, really? That's too complicated? Okay. I kind of picked it up in a minute, but, to me, they just added a sports-like logic. I love the Royal Rumble because it's very sports-like. It's basically an entire playoff system crammed into one match. So, but yeah, I do wish that there was more of a consistency with the rules. I do wish that there would be a less tendency towards no contests or kind of ridiculous shenanigans with the referees or anything of that nature, because that's just I don't know. I think that kind of just at this point, it's such a common thing in wrestling that it kind of just enhances the cartooniness of it. And maybe that's something they should look into in evolving professional wrestling to the next level or into something new for a new era. That might be something to look into, not doing ref bumps as much, or not having no contests and not having run-ins and things like that, and just let the matches speak for themselves. But I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. The Monday night, I'm going to keep calling it the Monday Night Fiasco, but that certainly inspired this. My John Cena video will be up either sometime this weekend or sometime early next week. We'll see on that. But until then, I'll see you all later.